We are talking to Seth Ferrante. We're so excited for this conversation, Seth. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And before we start the actual interview, I'm just curious, was there any food that you couldn't wait to eat when you got out of prison? Like one particular dish you were dreaming about while you were in there?
Yeah, actually, when I got out and my wife met me, she had a pizza for me.
A pizza, just
Yeah,
plain
like
cheese?
no, no, I think it was like a meat lover's pizza.
A meat lover's
Oh, there you
pizza.
go.
Did you like eat the whole thing by yourself in the car?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I could
Scarfed
see
it down.
that.
It wasn't pretty, I bet, huh?
Uh,
Pizza's
Yeah,
really
that's
one
great.
of those foods that I'm always surprised by how much I can eat of it. Like a whole pie is not that much once you start going slice by slice. you
For real.
know, fold it up, get it in there. So that okay, that's good. I like that. I like the idea of dreaming about pizza and then being greeted with your wife with by by with a pizza in her hand. That's awesome.
yeah,
Um,
Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. Oh, shout out to
Just,
Pizza Hut.
just went straight after it.
Shout out to the
Yeah.
Hut. Thank you. Thank you for that. I am Laura Cathcart Robbins, and this is the only one in the room. But I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hey, honey.
Hey, honey. So, like I said, today we are talking to Seth Ferrante. He is an ex con filmmaker who did 21 years in federal prison for a first time nonviolent LSD cannabis offense. He earned 3 college degrees in prison. Wow. Including a master's, wrote 22 books on gangsters, drug lords, and prison gangs, founded a publishing house and website, which is called Guerrilla Convict, and started a career as a journalist writing for Vice, Penthouse, and others. After being released, he started making films. He wrote and produced White Boy, which is currently on Netflix. He currently has numerous projects in production and development. God, that's so impressive. Welcome, Seth, again to the show.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I mean, 3 college degrees while in prison. That's, I mean, that's 2 more than most people get out of prison,
Mm.
Uh-huh.
right? And it's 3 more than both Scott and I have put together. So we're both very impressed with that. How do you identify, Seth?
Um, I'm like a red-blooded American male.
All right.
All right.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Hey,
yeah,
I grew up in the '70s and the '80s, so
yes,
I always tell people there's nothing like the '80s.
right?
Everybody now you're missing out. You're never going to go back to that time, but there's nothing like the '80s. So, I mean, I came of age in the '80s. I mean, maybe it was a little bit. I would say maybe life is a little bit more sensitive, and it was probably a little bit more violent, and whatever in the '80s. But I mean, that's kind of the era that I came up. So, you know,
The 80s were freaking cool. And first of all, the music from the 80s was iconic. It won't be repeated. There won't be another decade musically like the 80s. I had a lot of fun in the 80s. And so, wait, what decade were you in prison? When was that?
so I went to prison in 1993. So I was locked
93.
up from 1993 to October 1993 to January 2015.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. So the whole 90s and all the early 2000s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Not the whole 90s, but
yeah,
basically. Yeah.
basically, yeah.
Um, so you're in St. Louis right now. We talked about that, right? You split your time there between there and Chico, which is that okay to say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes people don't like people to know where they live. Um, but so you're in California and the Midwest in Missouri. Um, Tell me, let's just go back a little bit. Like, where were you in high school? Where was that? Where were you living then?
Um, yeah, so I went to high school first in San Jose, California.
Yeah.
But then my stepdad was in the military. He was in the Navy, so we moved around a lot. So actually, like probably like 10th and 11th grade, I was in England.
Oh,
So we were stationed in London. And then I went back. He got out of the military. He retired, and I went back and I did my senior year in Northern Virginia.
in Northern Virginia. So you lost your
Yeah.
British accent?
Yeah, no, I had like I remember when I went back to Virginia, this is like probably 88, and I had like this weird kind of English California Valley Boy accent.
That's a weird combination.
Yeah, on the
I
East
really want to.
Coast.
I want to hear that. I don't know why.
I know, I know. I want to hear it too. Maybe
I don't even think I could talk like that anymore. I
no.
don't. It's
That's
been too
crazy.
long.
So when you were in high school, were you dealing then?
Yeah, I probably started around age 15.
Around age 15. And so and we said it in your bio, but you were dealing like acid and weed and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, so I started smoking weed in California in San Jose, probably like around eighth grade when I was 13, and just experimenting with weed and different drugs, but mostly, I've always been kind of a cannabis psychedelic kind of guy. So when we went to England, that's when I actually started dealing because well, first off, they don't really have weed in England. It's more, but especially back then, it was more like hash.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I was and I went to school on a Department of Defense school. So like we're on an English military base, but it's like an American school.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people, a lot of people busted from the local area, but they got a lot of dorm students too because people like diplomats' kids, people that are stationed here or there, like Bulgaria, different NATO places. They
Right.
were shipped in to go to school, and I was like one of the only ones, because you had to go down and you had to deal with the Jamaicans in town basically to get the hash.
Right.
And like a lot of the kids, I mean, they were scared, So I was like the dude, everybody would give me the money,
Mm-hmm.
and I would go down. And at first it was like, okay, I was just doing it for my friends, but I figured out really quick, like, hey, if I get all their money,
Yep.
I don't have to pay for any drugs.
Yes.
So, I started being like that, and then eventually it turned where, I would just buy, you know, I say larger amounts, but a larger amount at that time at 15 was probably like an ounce of hash,
Okay.
and then I would
Yeah.
break it up and sell it to all the people, mostly the dorm students and the other kids on the campus.
Mm-hmm. So you like were learning like street finance at the same time that you were in school learning regular math and algebra and whatever else people learn in high
Yeah,
school.
I was learning, like the side hustle.
The
I was
side
learning the
hustle.
side hustle.
Yeah. So on your site, which I really hope everybody goes to check out, it's guerrillaconvict.com. It says as a teen you sold LSD and marijuana at 15 East Coast colleges, crisscrossing 5 states: Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Maryland. And that you were like this wannabe rock star following the Grateful Dead. And so it also says that you considered yourself a counterculture rebel and not a criminal. Why was that?
Well, because I've just never considered myself a criminal. I mean, I didn't beat people up. I didn't carry a gun. I didn't have a criminal organization. I didn't, sell what I thought were bad drugs. Like I didn't deal in cocaine, amphetamines, heroin, you
Mm-hmm.
know, stuff like that that makes people crazy or gets people addicted and makes people do all kinds of, insane things. So, I always consider myself an outlaw. I broke laws that I thought were wrong. And even at the age of like 16, 17, I was like, why is cannabis illegal? I questioned that, and I researched it and I looked into the history and also like hallucinogens. I was like, why are these, substances that are, basically expand your mind and make you question stuff and question how things are and question the way the world is, and the routine or the order or whatever. So, yeah, I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. People wanted to smoke weed, people wanted to trip on
Mm-hmm.
LSD, and I saw it as kind of a passage, for something that you go through and you take these substances and they expand your mind and they make it you look at different things. And I wanted people, to look at that because my dad was my stepdad was in the military, so I was kind of brought up in a military family, and it's like, we lived on a lot of bases when I was younger, and it's like, this is the way things are,
Mm-hmm.
this is, and I questioned that as a young man, and really now, like I look at it now, I mean, it's whatever 30 something years later, and I feel like I was in the right. I
Yeah.
feel like I was justified with the way things have kind of gone and the way things have kind of turned out. I was just, I was a little bit before my time, but
You were.
even back then, I held to those convictions. I held to those standards. And I feel justified now as a 51-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
I feel justified in how I felt and the action that I took as a 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 year old.
Well, and you've got to feel a little validated because of all the laws that have passed that have made not just marijuana legal, but hallucinogens legal as well in certain states. That people are finally coming around to your way of thinking, like you said, like 30 years later, right?
Oh no, yeah, definitely. Because if you look at the whole history, especially, I mean, like hallucinogens, psychedelics have always been used, like peyote, for the Indians, and like if you look different tribal cultures, they always use stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the shamans and not particularly LSD because that was only invented, not even 100 years ago. But there was always mushrooms, peyotes. It was always used. It was always kind of like a spiritual, religious
Mm-hmm.
kind of experience, even kind of therapeutic. And then if you look at cannabis, I mean, up until 100 years ago, up until like the 1920s, I mean, cannabis was used for everything, medicinally.
Yes.
And then there kind of came a time in the 20s where, if you want to call it like the industry leaders or like a lot of these famous names in American lore, like the Rockefellers or the DuPonts, and all these other big
Mm-hmm.
names, that they were these industry titans, they kind of basically they look at because cannabis, you'd had cannabis and cannabis treated like 60 things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you had some of the people, the pharmaceutical companies basically like came online, started doing business in the 20s, and what they did is they lobbied and they vilified marijuana and
Mm-hmm.
they made it real racial,
Yep.
you
I
know,
know about
with
that.
with
Yep.
so they made it real racial, like, oh, only these people, they're bad, they take this.
Mm-hmm.
But really, if you look at it in retrospect, it was all about greed. So it took like 100 years, for all this to come out. I mean, it's all coming out now, but for the last 100 years, especially like, my parents, my grandparents, those generations. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they just like pulled the wool over these people's eyes, and they didn't question it because their life was so good here. And I'm not knocking them, whatever. They went for the rhetoric, they went for the propaganda, but drugs like cannabis should have never been made illegal in the first place. It was basically made illegal so like if it treated 60 things, the pharmaceutical companies came in and they made a pill for each one of those things that
That's
they could
right.
sell.
Yeah.
And then the same thing like with the hemp industry. The hemp industry, they used to make like ropes, sails, all types of stuff. And they came in with the plastic industry. It's weird because if you look at it, look, the pharmaceutical and plastic industries both came online in the 20s
Mm.
at the same time that marijuana was being vilified.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they basically, and I can see as a capitalist, as somebody who wants to make money, why would you want something that grows anywhere,
Right.
that anybody can get,
Yeah.
that you're not going to be able to make money. So they
You
wanted to
can't
make it so they
control
can
it.
make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They.
And now 100 years later, our oceans are full of plastic.
Yep.
You know, people are dying every day from opiates. So I mean, it's just crazy. And if you really look at it, and like I say, this is not any conspiracy theory or any, this is if you look at the facts. I mean, basically, where we're at today with all these people dying from opiates and plastics all in the ocean, it's all from people's greed. It's
Yeah.
all from greed.
Yep.
Which is I look, I'm American, so I love capitalism. because there's no other countries where you can come and you can start with nothing and you can build it into something. I mean, this is a country that happens. That it's not really available in a lot of other countries that people can acquire wealth like that. But what we've seen in the last 100 years in this country is the dark side of capitalism has
Mm-hmm.
kind of co-opted everything, and it kind of started. If you look, it started in the 20s when a lot of those industry leaders that had made their money off industry and sweatshops,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, they were getting pressured for that, so they were looking for how can we make money, how can we keep this going, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what they came up with. So, I just look at it. It is what it is. I mean, but I'm glad we are where we're at
Where we're
now.
at
We're
now.
coming out of this. Yeah, we're coming out of this like 100 years haze. Because like my parents always thought like they considered like cannabis. I've always been a cannabis dude since I was like 13, but they consider cannabis like heroin, and
Right.
it's like crazy. And even my real dad, who's 83-year-old ex-marine, like
Mm.
he's even said to me like in the last couple of years, he's like, man, well, I guess you were kind of right about the cannabis thing, you know.
You got validated by him too. That's awesome. I mean, and it is. It's everybody is coming around to this type of thinking. Well, not everybody, but the voters are proving that the majority of people feel the way that you're expressing right now. So I want to talk a little bit about. I think I have my timelines confused. So if you could just take me through, when did you get arrested for dealing?
So I got arrested in 1991.
In 91. And how old were you?
I was 20 years old.
You're 20 years old. And then you got arrested, you went to court. Were you remanded to custody or were you free?
No, I got a bond, and
Hmm.
then I took off.
Okay, so that's when you took off. So you're 20 years old and now you're a fugitive. Um, and so I read this thing because you have it on your site too, your most wanted poster. So the qualifications for the criteria for deciding which fugitives you get put on the most wanted list are that they pose a threat to society at large, or the likelihood that publicizing their crimes on through the list will help catch them. So I'm assuming that you didn't pose a harm to society at large, but they thought by putting your face out there, they'd be more likely to catch you. And so you got this most wanted poster, very handsome mugshot back
Thank you,
then.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And it says faked his suicide prior to sentencing, has previous history of drug abuse at the bottom. So tell me that story. Tell me the story of being 20, being out on bond, and then deciding that rather than go to sentencing, you're going to fake your own death.
Yeah, well, I was kind of like, I mean, my everything I built up, my whole identity was like I was like this outlaw. I was like this counterculture figure. I was like this drug dealer, and this was something that I had steadily been building from the age of 13. So then at 20 to have like everything that I built about myself and who I was and everything I believed in it for 7 years, especially as a young adult kind of coming into manhood, just everything was stripped away, and it
Mm.
was like you're wrong, you're evil, you're the
Yeah.
bad guy. And I never thought any of this about myself. I mean, I was out in the suburbs, so it was a totally different story. I was at colleges, everybody's smoking weed, everybody's doing, tripping on LSD and mushrooms. It's
Right.
it's not a bad thing. These are all people that are, who knows where they're at. But the majority of the people are professionals now,
Right.
my age that I was with. So yeah, it was really devastating, right? And I had to question, myself, like, am I right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I wrong? And then the whole thing too, like, like, oh, you're a drug addict. They really push that on you. Like you're a drug addict.
Mm.
Drugs destroyed your life. Like in the 80s, with the war on drugs, and the eggs, and this is your brain on
Right.
drugs, and the
Yes.
Dare program,
Yeah.
and just say no. I mean, they were really pushing this. So as a young man who had these certain convictions and beliefs, when all this happened, I mean, it kind of shattered me to my core.
Mm.
Because I was like, when everybody tells you're wrong, maybe you're like, oh, well, maybe I am wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was really earth shattering, but at the same time, I mean, I was like, man, I'm not going to prison for this. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna run. I had a little bit of money. I knew I had connections. I knew a lot of people.
Mm.
I bounced around a lot. From being in the military, so I knew people everywhere, and I was just like, basically, I'm gonna take off. I'm not gonna wear this. They're not gonna pin this on me. And
Mm.
even like the whole process, like all of a sudden, I mean, I'm like a non-violent first-time offender. Selling psychedelics and cannabis, and now like they're branding me like I'm a drug kingpin.
Right.
I
Right.
was never a drug kingpin, so it's like weird. They put these weird narratives on you,
Mm-hmm.
and they just kind of and the whole thing with the war on drugs. It was just crazy. I mean, at the time, I didn't really pay attention to anything about the war on drugs. It was really kind of early on. Because I think it all kind of started like around 87 or 88, and they were mostly focused on people of color,
Yep.
African Americans in the inner city because all the crack epidemic and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why those laws were formed, and that's who they were targeting. So, I mean, I really had no idea. And then, they came and got me, and they said, like I'm this kingpin, I'm all this stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, as a young man, kind of the notoriety or the infamy,
Mm.
was kind of cool, but at the same time, it was just like it was like crazy because everything they were saying, even though I'm not denying I did supply 15 colleges in 5 states. I mean, I sold a lot of LSD. In my case, they said like 100,000 hits, but I probably sold way more than that.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
I sold tons and tons and tons of cannabis. But like I say, I believe that I was doing the right thing. I believe that this stuff should be legal. So it was kind of like this crux,
Mm-hmm.
and it hit me, and I was like teetering on this edge, and my confidence was shot and it was shattering. But then I just came up. I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm just gonna take off. I'm gonna take off and let things how fall how they were. And I basically had a plan. I was like, I was gonna fake my suicide, which I did. I faked my suicide. I'm gonna take off, and I figured if I'm gone for 7 years, they don't find a body, then Seth Ferrante can be declared legally dead. Once Seth Ferrante is declared legally dead, then there's no case. So
Mm.
that was kind of like my reasoning, my that was kind of my idea behind everything. But really, what I did when I faked my suicide, um, I messed up because where I staged it, I made it seem like I jumped in the Potomac River, into like some Class 5 rapids, at this Great Falls National Park in Northern Virginia, where a lot of people would commit suicide there because if you jump in the water, I mean, it's Class 5 rapids. You can't swim, and there's a whole bunch of rocks, so you're gonna get smashed against the rocks. It's
Right.
pretty much once you go in, you're gonna die, you're gonna drown, or you're gonna get smashed against the rocks. So I remembered this as a teenager, reading like through the newspaper, like the Metro section and stuff like that. And so I staged it there. I planned it, but I did one thing wrong. I staged a suicide on the wrong side of the dam. So what they did is they dragged the river right by the dam for 2 weeks, and they didn't find a body. So then after 2 weeks, they declared my suicide a hoax.
So how did you stage the suicide?
I just, I got like some clothes. I got like a shirt, my wallet, a jacket, a bottle of vodka, and I walked off one of the trails on the areas like on the cliffs, over the river where you're not supposed to be, like an out of bounds area, and I set like a little scene there, and then what I did, I had a suicide note in my car.
Mm.
I parked my car. I had a suicide note, and then I just waited until some people walked by the trail, and I jumped out, and I was like, my friend, he just jumped in the water.
Ah.
And then I rolled out, and I had another friend pick me up and drive me to the airport, and I guess those people just stayed there and found a little setting and notified the park rangers.
Sure. And then so you said you threw your belongings on the wrong side of the dam? Is that right?
Yeah, no, well, I staged my suicide because I staged my suicide on the wrong side of dam. I should have done it if I wanted my body to wash, to fictitiously wash out to the Atlantic Ocean. I would have had to do it on the other side of the dam. So that was like the one little detail that I didn't catch as a 20-year-old. Brilliant plan,
Yes, yes.
but just for that one little detail that I missed.
So how did you know that it didn't work?
Well, because when I went out to LA, so I was actually in Hollywood. Well, I was actually up the coast first in Point Magoo, and then I
Mm.
came down to Hollywood. But back then they had like newspaper stands, so I'm going to the newspaper stands in LA every day, and I'm reading the Washington Post.
Ah,
And
yeah.
I'm reading it like every day, like as because they didn't have internet or anything back then, so you had to go get the newspaper. So I'm actually reading, like first when they said like, Fairfax LSD kingpin commits suicide, and then like 2 weeks later, it's like prosecutors call Fairfax LSD kingpins suicide a hoax.
Ooh. So then does your heart drop and you like, what am I going to do now? Or are you just like, I'm just out, so I'm going to just keep living my life?
Yeah, I mean, my original plan, it kind of put a dent in like Seth Ferranti being dead, being declared legally dead after 7 years. So, then I knew, okay, well, but whatever, it's adjustment. I mean, I'm already a fugitive. So, I already had fake ID, so I was getting fake ID. So I was like, I'm just going to do what I have to do, even though my original plan, didn't work out how I wanted it to. I mean, I still, I'm alive. I'm still here. I'm living.
Yeah,
Now I got to be looking over my shoulder and stuff like that.
sure. And what was the name on your fake ID? Who did you become?
Oh, so I had a bunch. I had Christopher Maple, um,
Well,
Christopher Lynette. I had a ton of different. I probably had about 20 different IDs.
who were you when you met your wife?
Actually, everybody called me Christopher Haas
Christopher
because
Haas.
I had a whole bunch of IDs with Chris as
Mm-hmm.
first name,
Mm-hmm.
and so kind of that was kind of like my nickname. At the time I was coming up from Texas, so I started in LA and then I ended up in Texas. And then I started running loads of weed from Texas up to St. Louis. So that's how I got the St. Louis connection where I met my wife.
Ah,
And I used to tell everybody like I was from Texas. Like at that time in Texas, like in the early '90s in Texas, like that's what all the people like they would say like, "What's up, Hoss? What's up, Captain?"
mm-hmm.
Those were the words. They didn't say "dude" like in California.
Right.
They called everybody like Hoss and Captain.
Yep.
So I was down in Texas for a while, and so like when I brought that up to St. Louis, I would call everybody Hoss because
Mm-hmm.
that was like my backstory. Like I'm from Texas.
Yeah.
When you're a fugitive, you got to have all these backstories. Who you are. For your ID. To be believable.
Sure. Well, you're
Because
acting.
obviously, yeah, I couldn't be myself. So yeah, I would call everybody Haas, and then everybody knew me as Chris first name, but nobody really knew my last name because I didn't disclose that. And there's a lot of Chris's, so everybody just started referring to me as Christopher Haas.
Okay. I like that. So you met her. Did you fall in love with her right away?
No, I don't think I did. She said she fell in love with me right away the moment she saw me. I mean, me, it took a little longer, but yeah, I mean, definitely we had a relationship, before I went in, and and she's always been a special girl. Yeah, but I can't say, like I fell in love, like on the spot. It
Yeah.
was more for me. It was more something that the fire started building and building and
Yeah.
burning brighter as it went on,
Well, I,
especially once I got locked up.
right, right. Well, I was just gonna say that with the way you had to live, it seems like a romantic entanglement would be difficult because that would mean you would have to stay in one place. There would be a lot of explanations or things that you. So I would imagine that your immediate thought would be to not fall in love with somebody, and
Yeah,
then that sometimes you can't help that though. So
yeah.
tell me about what happens when they finally catch you, and I think you're with her at that time. Is that correct?
So actually, she didn't even know my real name until the U.S. Marshals told her.
Ah.
So, but I actually got arrested again with somebody, and they matched up my prints.
Uh oh.
But so I got busted with somebody who we actually had weed in the car, and it was actually my weed, but it was the person they were selling it for me. So I had fronted it to them. So and it was their car, so we got arrested. And then we got taken in, and they printed us, but it was a guy's car, and it was, even though it was weed that I'd fronted to me, it was his weed. He was responsible for it. So he claimed it. It was only like half a pound. So
Mm-hmm.
he claimed it. So they let me out, and then I bailed him out and everything. But like within 3 days, they matched up my prints.
Mm-hmm.
So then they had the U.S., like the Midwest U.S. Marshals, which was crazy. I was top 15 U.S. Marshals list, which was for this ungodly reason. And, I was like a first-time nonviolent offender, and they decided to make me top 15 in the whole United States.
Wow.
And at the time, I had no clue. Eventually, once I was in prison and I started doing FO, Freedom of Information Acts and stuff like that, I found out. I found out why. But basically, there was this guy. He's actually a Fourth Circuit appeals court judge right now,
Mm-hmm.
named Henry Hudson, and he was like the second in charge U.S. prosecutor when my case developed out of the Northern District of Virginia, back in '91. And then it's like weird. Like as soon as I became a fugitive, then he transferred to become the head of the U.S. Marshals in Northern Virginia,
Mm.
right? And then he did all the paperwork, to make me top 15 fugitive, because that's all it is paperwork. They can do the paperwork on anyone they want. And now this dude's like an appeal court judge. I don't know if he has political aspirations or whatever, but it kind of shows you, if you know about criminal justice in this country and the people that work in criminal justice, like the only way they get promotions, because like if you're a prosecutor, well, a lot of prosecutors, they want to be judges or they want to get in politics, and I'm going to give you a perfect example. Rudy Giuliani, who everybody knows. Rudy Giuliani cut his teeth with the mob trials in the 80s. He was the one that kept going after Gotti.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's wrong with our criminal justice system, because it's set up. It's not set up on right and wrong. It's set up on winning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, as I've kind of learned, like over the years from being in prison and doing some research and getting all the Freedom of Information Act stuff, this dude, Henry Hudson, basically, I was like a black mark because I fled, because I was just like a little suburban kid. They didn't think I was going to flee. They thought I was going to cooperate with them and make a whole bunch of cases for him, but I didn't do that. So I kind of left a black mark on his record.
Right.
And then, he was the type of guy, where he didn't want that black mark on his record. So he transferred to U.S. Marshals. He made me top 15 fugitive. And then he caught me, and then that was like a feather in his cap.
Well, you were like his white whale.
And now he's a federal appeals court judge. So,
Damn.
Not saying, he probably did that to a lot of people besides me, to get that federal judgeship. But, that's the way our legal system works, which is crazy, because this dude is putting all this effort on me, a first-time nonviolent LSD cannabis offender. Who knows what was going on back then?
Right.
And he was putting all this investigative effort on me. So it's just crazy. Like when you look at things like in this country, sometimes how stuff works. And the more we investigate and the more we look back at our past, and the more people are, writing books and doing documentaries and doing long form journalism, more and more of this stuff, from the 80s and 90s is coming up, and it's being unearthed. And now when you look at it now, it's like, man, it's like these people, I wouldn't say like they were overtly corrupt, like they were putting money in their pocket or they were doing something illegal. They were working within the system. But when you really look back at it now, it speaks to our whole criminal justice system is so corrupt. Like they want to talk about other countries like South Africa, or they want to talk about Russia, the Gestapo, or the KGB or all this stuff. We were doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
They were sitting in this country crying about South Africa and Mandela. They were doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? They were just better at making, putting a polish or a spin on it so, it doesn't look that bad. Because like my case, what they did to me was messed up. But there's way more cases that are way more, messed up and kind of, push the level of corruptness, even more than mine. But, mine's just, one example, not to say, it's the biggest example, because, in the war on drugs, the cops and law enforcement politicians were basically doing whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the prison industry was lobbying them, giving them money. So they're taking, they're taking, I mean, I basically said, if you did time, that's basically blood money.
Mm.
You know, I did over 2 decades in prison.
Yeah.
So I did 2 decades in prison so these people could have a career and act like they were the good guy.
Yep. What were you sentenced to?
I got 25 years when I was 22.
You got 25 years. So they knocked off four,
Yeah, in
three,
the feds, you got to
four,
do 85%, 85%.
85%. All right. So
Yeah, so
this,
you got to do 85% of the feds. No parole.
no parole. So you weren't married at that time though, but you were in a relationship with the woman that is now your wife.
Yeah,
Um,
Diane, yep.
she has learned your real identity as you're going to prison because you a fugitive that's been caught, and she stays your partner when you go to prison.
Yeah, actually, she even got arrested on a complaint, because first the U.S. Marshals, they're trying to get information from her, but, you know, she wouldn't really tell them anything. And this is when I probably started to fall in love with her more because, because basically, like, everybody on my case, I mean, it's all white middle class suburban kids. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I'm hanging out with a bunch of gangsters or criminals or gangbangers or people that are kind of versed in the streets and what law enforcement does. So, basically everybody snitched on me. So she was like one of the only people, that didn't snitch on me, and that kind of that was kind of the first thing I noticed. I was like, man, like, who's this girl? Like, everybody snitched on me and she won't. So she actually they did a complaint on her, a federal complaint. They took her down, like, arrested her, fingerprinted her,
Mm.
and yeah, she still wouldn't tell them anything. So and then when I was locked up and I was in the federal holding facility here, she was coming to visit me, and I basically told her, I said, because she was scared about the case, and I would say, well, look, I go, I'm not going to testify against you. I go, who's going to testify? I go, they can think they know whatever they want. If they don't have anybody to corroborate it, I go, just stick to your story. I go, they can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, they dropped the complaint or whatever. But, they were trying to do that to her.
And she wasn't going for it. So
Mm.
that is something you definitely want to recognize and stick with for sure. That's some real loyalty there, and principles, right?
No, no, yeah, definitely. Because I mean, she knew me. She knew what I was doing. Like, even the U.S. Marshals. I mean, these people. Look, I'm telling you, they say they're just doing their job, but this is what law enforcement does every day. Like, they were telling her all types of stuff. Like, I had AIDS,
Mm,
and I had, like, given other girls, like, AIDS and like, just outright lying to
damn.
try to get her to cooperate. And it's just like, when you look at it on the face of it, I mean, it's evil, man. That's what, like, I would never do anything like that. That's what evil people do.
Right. Right.
But these people, they're supposedly, the protectors of society.
Yeah.
That's how they work. And especially, like, with the drugs. I mean, they were just, like, crazy on the drug war. And a lot of these dudes, like what I do now, like with my film work and stuff like that, I interview, like, a lot of retired ex law enforcement and stuff like that. And, some of them, they kind of cop to, and they go, yeah, we were just doing our job. Yeah, but it was messed up. We shouldn't have been doing stuff. But, like, some of them, like some of these DEA guys that I've interviewed, like, they're still, I mean, it's just like, it's crazy, like, how brainwashed they are,
Mm. I
about the drugs thing.
I want to make sure that we have time to talk about your third act as we talked about. But I just want to just kind of go over some stuff. You were still dealing drugs in prison, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I was selling weed. I
You were
would get
selling
weed
weed
in
in
prison.
prison. You also got those 3 college degrees somewhere in there,
Yep, yep.
and you started writing. Were you a journalist while you were in prison?
Yeah, yeah, I was. I used to do a column for Vice.
So
So I started doing
crazy.
this column for Vice called "I'm Busted," like in the early 2000s. So it was basically, it's weird because I've had people say this more recently, but, like, now you got, like, all this prison stuff, like, on YouTube, and
Yeah.
you got all these prison writers. But I had someone, like, say it, like, on social media the other day. They were like, they basically said that I was kind of like the precursor to all these, prison podcasts that are so
Yes.
popular now,
Yes.
because I was like, not to say, I mean, there were prison writers before me, but, kind of like in the modern era, like in the 90s, I was like, the biggest and most prolific prison writer,
I would
all
say.
throughout, yeah,
Yeah.
the 90s into the 2000s.
Well, also you're a really good writer. Like I read a bunch of your stuff when I was preparing for this interview, and sometimes I would forget that I was reading it for research and just get caught up in what I was reading. You just really bring people in a really unique way, and it's not just because of your perspective and the life you lived, but there's a craft to the writing there. So that's, I mean, that's something not everybody has
Thank you.
that. Yeah, you're
That's
welcome.
that. That's that master's degree.
That's that master's
Taught me how to
degree
write.
being put to work.
Really, really taught me how to write.
Well, I mean, to good use. You put it to good use, and you got married while you were in prison
Yeah, I got married in 2005. Yeah,
in
in the
2005
prison visiting room.
in the
Yep.
visiting room, just like a couple witnesses and like a prison chaplain or something.
Just it was like we had to pay the chaplain to come in, and then there was like two prison guards and my case manager.
Wow, wow, very
Yeah.
romantic.
Then we after the ceremony we had like 15 minutes to talk.
And that's it.
Yeah.
No conjugal visits.
No, not in the feds. Nope.
Damn, I didn't. I was imagining something
I
like
I I married for love,
you married for love. Yes, you did.
and
And
I still at that time
yeah,
I had like 10 years left still. I still had 10 years to go. So
no, she married for love.
I
She
mean I did too.
Yeah,
I mean
yeah,
I married for
yeah.
love too.
No, but I mean, but that's real love for her to come in when you have
Oh
10
yeah,
years
no,
in front
definitely.
of you.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so
And from
yeah,
that, so she started like all my publishing house.
yeah,
I had the idea for everything, but she was actually the person on the outside. Even like with all my writing, right?
yeah.
She was the one doing all the emails. She was the one contacting the editors. I would type stuff up in the prison law library and the typewriter. I would send it out to her. She would scan it. She would send it back. I was always getting like manuscripts back and forth, and I
Mm,
would just mark it up, with pen and stuff, and she would do all the changes. So really, like half of everything I did, without her, would have been like a frustrated writer in prison who couldn't get anything anywhere. So she really made all the moves out here for me. I even had people like when I was inside. I had people on the street that other writers or journalisms or people editors, and they were like they would tell me all the time. They'd be like, man, they'd be like you got more stuff going on than like people out here.
yes, you do.
They're
Yeah,
they're like yeah, they were like you're everywhere.
yeah.
But that was kind of my thing. I was in prison, but my mind was out here.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to do stuff out here. I was trying to, share my story, share others people's stories. I was just trying to, because I had a lot of anger. I was really angry. I was like, man, because I'm an American, and you're gonna lock me up for 25 years, for cannabis and LSD. And I'm a firm believer. If you're a violent person and you do like heinous things, especially if you like to abuse women or kids, you belong in jail. I mean, if we found out about people like that in prison, we would beat them down. We would get them locked up in the hole.
Mm,
We didn't let people like that walk on the yard. If you had anything, violence against women, violence against kids, pedophiles,
yeah.
child molesters, or snitches too.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like a big thing in prison.
Um, boy, I have so many more questions because I wanted to know what happened to the people that snitched on you when your wife didn't. But did you ever talk to them again, or were they ever dealt with in any way?
Yeah, I don't know. At first I was kind of really angry, but after about 5 years, I kind of I was like, I blame myself. I saw the bigger picture.
Mm,
Whatever. I saw like I put some people in positions maybe I shouldn't have put them in
okay.
because they weren't cut like that. But also I blamed the system too. Yeah, because a lot of when the feds come and they talk like 10, 20 years prison. I mean,
Yeah, it's
most
scary.
people are not. Yeah, most people are not gonna. And the whole way they do it, man, because the way the cops, man, they're awful because they come, and especially with like young white kids from the suburbs, they the way they say it, like they say it straight out. They're like, oh well, we'll just lock you up and we'll put you in with like, Big Bubba
Mm-hmm.
in the cell, and we'll see what happens. And the way they play, like, like that rape stuff. I mean, that's evil, man. The way they play, like the law enforcement to this day, they still do that.
Mm. Mm.
And these are supposedly, the protectors of our community, but yet they threaten people with rape, or they, even if it's not, going to happen, they put it in their mind like it can happen. I don't know. That's never been my mentality. That's never been the type of person I am. If I want you to get moved a certain way, I'm going to try to convince you a different way than try to convince you with, like, oh, you might get raped if you don't cooperate.
Right.
But that's basically what our law enforcement country does in this country.
So you found your way to forgive the people that felt like they had to.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just, I felt like it was bigger. I shouldn't have put him in that position, and I blame the system. I blame like I said earlier, the individual people in the system. I wouldn't say like they're, like overtly corrupt, but they're working within a corrupt system.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole criminal justice system is the way it operates is corrupt.
Mm.
From the prosecutors having to win big cases to get promoted to, they don't investigate. They rely on cooperator testimony. So really our law enforcement, our cops are doing themselves a disservice because they don't investigate anything because they're so used to people telling them everything.
Right.
And most of the time people tell them they're telling lies because they're just trying to save their ass. So it's just the way the whole system is totally corrupt.
So I want to thank you for that. And I want to switch gears just for the end of this to talk about your transition into making films. Because that's a huge pivot from, what you described, the way you grew up, where you grew up, what you've done with your life, even getting the degrees. Almost nobody's cut out to make films, and you're making a lot of them. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I just, as I was a writer. I would say I was a writer before I was in prison. Not a professional writer, but I used to. I used to write songs. I used to write poetry. I played guitar. I played in bands. I used to play like Dungeons and Dragons, and I would make up all these. I'd be the dungeon master and make up all these super big worlds, like off the modules. So I was already creative, and I was always a writer in a sense. But for me as a writer, man, it's just like an evolution. Like you write articles and you write books. Then you go to movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, it's like the next step in the profession. I mean, if you're at the top of your profession, if you're good enough, that's where you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I always envisioned myself going there. And probably when I had about 10 years left, I was doing a whole bunch of books and journalism. I was basically like, I'm going to make films when I get out.
Mm-hmm.
I made that decision probably like around 2005. As soon as I made that decision, I started like my courses and my college courses too. Like I got 3 degrees, but it was a 17-year process. I'm only taking like 9 to 12 credits a year. It's not like, most people 6 years.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of time to work. I had a lot of time to think about this. I had a lot of time to develop, at the same time while I'm on the compound, and I'm trying to survive and make sure nothing bad happens to me. I got all this stuff outside, but, that was my goal. Like I put 10 years of thought into that. I read a lot of books. I took a lot of courses on film, script writing, stuff like that. So to me, it was just like the next step. I could write books and I could write screenplays and I could do whatever I wanted to in there with a pen, but I couldn't like make film. I couldn't be on set. So, when I got out, it was like I was almost chomping at the bit,
Yeah.
Because I'd been building up for 10 years. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And really, I tell people when I got out 2015, I thought everything that I'm doing now, I thought it was going to be like, I had like a 2-year window. I was like, in 2 years, I'm going to be where I'm at. I mean, now, it took about 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm where I want to be now. So, that's why they say in life, never set deadlines or whatever, because, stuff can still happen, but I thought I was going to be where I was at right now,
in
like
2 years.
2 years out. Yeah. And I was kind of, like anybody, I had doubts, and regrets and second guessed myself, when I didn't get to where I wanted to be. But eventually, I stayed at it, and now everything's clicking. I got White Boy on Netflix. I got a ton of stuff. I got 6 different projects I'm working on now that are at different stages of completion that are going to be coming out like the next 12 to 18 months. So I'm just going to be, I'm about to drop bombs, and it's all crime. It's all documentary, like crime, drug stuff, that kind of
It's
builds off
money.
white boy.
It's all money.
Yeah.
All that stuff is
Hmm.
just major money right now. Yeah, so White Boy is still on Netflix right now, and if people go to gorilla.com, they'll be able to see all your new projects as they come up and find them. All your books are there as well, and your most wanted poster,
Yeah.
like I mentioned. I'm going to ask you this one last question for our Patreon subscribers. Uh, tell me tell me two things. What are you most proud of? And then what one thing would you go back and change if you could? Tell me where can people find you?
So my website, gorillaconvict.com. But you can also find that website like under my name, SethFerrante.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then on social media, I'm on all social media under my name, Seth Ferrante. Uh, I think I'm really lucky because I think I'm the only Seth Ferrante maybe
Ah,
in the world.
really?
Maybe. I think so. Or there's not very many Seth Ferrantes. I think I might be the only one.
Nice. You're the only one in the
So
room, any room you go into.
yeah, yeah. I like my name. My name is kind of like I think it's kind of like Quentin Tarantino. It's kind of like one of those names that
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of or like a Benicio del Toro.
Yep.
It's just one of those names. It's a different name, but it's a name that not a lot of people have,
Oh, and a name that you
if any
got you
people
got
have.
to reclaim it, right? Because you had given it up for a while, and
Yeah,
now you
for
get
two
it
years.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it came back to me.
it
That's what
came
they
back to
say.
you.
If you love something, set it free, and it'll come back to you.
And it came back. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Seth. This was so great. So amazing talking to you. You have an incredible story, and
Thank you.
yeah, and I can't wait to hear Scott's talk with you tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Seth.
Hey, what's up? I'm Seth Ferrante, and I'm the only one who faked his death to avoid prison.